Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hello, dear students. Welcome to another lecture. In this class, we are going to continue with Unit 13 of Class 12 in Education Nagaland Board. The chapter that we are discussing is individual differences. So we by now have learned the meaning of the term individual differences, the possible definitions of individual differences, the causes of individual differences, as well as the areas in which your differences reflect. Now in this class, we are going to focus on how can we assess, administer these individual differences. Now, the psychological way in which the individual differences can be assessed are on the basis of certain procedures that will help you to evaluate the personality of a person, the behavior, the abilities of the individuals. All these procedures are going to be used to describe how one person is different from the other person when faced with the similar situation or when faced with the similar problem. So, these psychological assessments, these assessment tests are frequently done by the psychologists. And these, psychological tests only enable us to pass judgments such as nice, good, somebody is bad, somebody is attractive, somebody is ugly, genius, idiot, smart, wise, sensitive, so on and so forth. So scientific psychology always tries to, systematize these procedures so that the assessment, when you are trying to assess the individual differences, that can be done with minimum error and the accuracy level can be the maximum. So this is what the scientific psychologists aim at. Now, some psychologists have developed tests that can assess your characteristics. Such psychological tests are very simple, their structure is such that you will be able to generate a result on the basis of the behavior of a person. Now, in order to for this test to be useful, you have to first, decide the purpose why you want to get the test done. What is the reason for which you want to know about that person? And only then can you decide whether the test is reliable or not. For example, if you want to assess the person on the basis of their beauty, you will have to monitor your test in that direction only. You cannot assess the person's height, if you want to know about the beauty. So knowing the reason why you want to assess is very important, and only then can you expect your test to be valid as well as reliable. Now, a test could be called as reliable and unreliable on the basis of its result. What do we get at the end of it? What is the outcome of that result? For example, if a person who is found to be of average intelligence on one occasion should remain average intelligent person only after 2 weeks or 3 weeks when the same test is applied to him. If the test gives you a different value, a different intelligence quotient of that person, then that test is unreliable in nature. So, a test of intelligence can be reliable only when a person who scores high remains a high scorer on both the occasions, and somebody who scores low remains a low scorer on both the occasions. So this quality is very much necessary if you want your test to be reliable. Now, the validity of a test refers to the degree to which it assesses what it wants to assess. As I said, if I want to assess the beauty quotient of a person, my test would be called as valid if I am able to assess that accurately. So, a valid test of the personality gives you a good measure, a good result of one's personality. It tells something about the behavior of that person in different situations where the other aspects are kept, static. So, it will be called valid only and only if you get the desired result for which you wanted to conduct the test. Now, the test should be standardized. The standardization of the test is very important. What do we mean by standardization now? Standardization means that, process in which you are establishing the procedure of administration, how you are going to conduct a test to judge all the persons in the same way under the same circumstances. Your test should not be in such a manner that today, in this circumstance, when it is summers, my test is going to be different, and when it is winters, my test will vary. Or when I have scientists, my test is going to be different, and when I have actors, my test is going to be different. No. It will remain the same. It will have a standard test for different people under different circumstances. So it involves establishing some norms, some rules, so that an individual score can be compared to the others also. When the test is standard, when the condition was standard for everybody, the comparison is easily feasible and is accurate as well. So it is very important because your test score is going to be a relative. It is going to be a comparative value that will be compared to the others. It is not an absolute value, as you can find in when you measure somebody physically. So standardization is important because it ensures that whatever you are doing is uniform in nature, it can be objectified, and the results are reliable and interpretable. Now, when we talk about standardization, the psychologists have developed tests to measure the human characteristics. Okay. In schools also, we have the achievement tests that are used to judge and to analyze the students' achievements, to know how much they have learned. So psychologists also use such tests to assess the ability or the personality of people. Such tests tell what an individual can do when he or she is at best. So these tests mentor your potential, not your achievement. How successful you are or are going to be in life is not going to be determined by these tests. What is going to be determined is how potential you are, how capable, how efficient you are. So tests of intelligence and aptitude fall under this category. Aptitude also refers to how quickly you are going to be able to learn a new skill in a specific condition. And personality tests, they measure your characteristic, your thinking, your feelings, or your behavioral skills. Now, what is the significance of individual differences in education? Now, individual differences in the field of education has been recognized since a very long time. Since a very long time, whatever new methodologies or things are introduced in the field of education, always keep in mind the fact that individual differences do exist. The psychologist Galton was the first one who brought up the concept of introducing the curriculum according to the individual differences. he carried on that tests, and that has been followed ever since then. One always needs to consider the fact that in the school, in the organization, the students, the people are always different in nature. And therefore, the education which is imparted to them should be such that, empowers them and that makes them a better person no matter what race or what caste or culture they belong to. So the individual differences need to be set aside in the education, and your entire system has to be formulated to deliver the best result. You see, knowledge, obviously, when people are different, their knowledge is going to be different. How much they are related or how much they are socially active, everything is going to be different. And therefore, one should be aware of these differences, how much the children are different, what are the causes of their difference, whether is it because of some culture, some race, gender, the background that they hail from, or because of some special problem that the child possesses. So knowing the reason for the difference is important, because only on the basis of that can you find a solution and an appropriate teaching methodology. So education is concerned with the individual differences because it understands that the degree of growth is different in everybody, and therefore the education and the training have to be imparted accordingly. Now, we all know that education can be made efficient. How? When the teacher has to put minimum efforts, time, but what is gained by the students or by the people is maximum. So how can we do that? When the methodology that is adopted by you is perfect. When you understand what is the difference between people and the achievements of the people are respected. The teacher considers that if a child is good at dramatics, then the child should be given good exposure in the field of dramatics only. So when you give due respect to the individual differences that exist in the people and consider them when training or teaching, then that is going to prove to be beneficial for them. Next, the exact knowledge, and the opinion is not important. One needs to know that if you want your child to progress in future, if you want your child to develop, to grow in future, the individual differences must be kept in mind. Okay? Whenever you are assessing the child, you need to have the knowledge of the individual differences, but one should not form an opinion on the basis of it. Because forming an opinion leads to biasness, leads to partiality. And therefore, one needs to remember them but not follow an opinion or a biasness out of this. And therefore, again, the teacher should be considerate of the physical, the emotional differences, as well as the cognitive, the individual differences between the students as well. Now, the teacher must also be familiar. She should also know about all the approaches that can be used by her in order to ensure that the maximum learning reaches the pupil. Whatever instruction mode, whatever program she wants to consider, she can. But that program, that mode of instruction should consider the differences in the individual's personalities and characters. However, it is also important that there is no broad classification within the class with respect to the children. The teacher is not supposed to classify the types of children, because it will mean or it will reflect to the child that he or she is getting differentiated. So that also needs to be taken care of. So we know that individual differences exists. The traits, the characters in the individuals are different on the basis of their capabilities, on the basis of their abilities, their need, their interest, their approach, their attitude, and so on and so forth. So, an educational institution needs to follow a differentiated approach if it wants to ensure maximum learning which is imparted to the students. Now, under this, one of the dilemma, one of the confusion that an educator deals with is the fact that they don't admit, there are so many students, there are so many people who don't admit that they are different. Okay, they want to be treated just the way the others are being treated. And when such is the scenario, then obviously nothing can be done to provide them a specialized or a special training module. Now, there were traditional methods in the teaching methodology where a lot of emphasis were given, a lot of stress was given on how similar the people were, but the differences were ignored. The people's difference in ability was ignored, their intelligence level was ignored, their interest level, their training, their strength, everything was ignored, and a very mechanical, a common mode of education was imparted, which was incorrect. Now, the training has to be shifted to a mode where the nature and the different needs of the individuals are respected, they are taken care of. The school system has to be flexible enough to change according to the needs of the students and to adapt itself to the changes which are coming in the society. Because a school is the place where a student goes seeking for growth and development. And if the school, the educational institution is not well planned, the entire administration will fail and the differences will continue to exist between the students. So, my dear students, I'm going to pause here now. And in my next lecture, we'll discuss with you about the special children or the differently abled children. So, I shall see you all soon in my next lecture. Thank you.